Hello, I'm Mark Siegrist filling in for Dan Jones this week on interCHANGE. Coming up, what's next for Obamacare? Why is the race for Wisconsin governor so close right now? And how would you rate taxi service in Milwaukee? But first, let's meet our panel. Kevin Fischer, veteran broadcast journalist. Mr. Joel McNally, longtime newspaper columnist. Gerard Randall, education consultant and local job creation expert. A bit later, Rick Horowitz is keeping watch of gunplay on the highway. You won't want to miss that. Topic number one now. President Obama's health care initiative has always been a political football, but now it's become a legal one. Two federal appeals courts have offered differing opinions on the validity of the Affordable Care Act. Congressional intent is at the issue. The program continues despite legal challenges over subsidies and governance. But millions of Americans who signed up in Wisconsin and elsewhere are holding their breath. So what happens next, Gerard?
Once again, it's on a path to reach the U.S. Supreme Court for some kind of settlement. I found it surprising that the two courts, within just a short period of time of each other, came up with, with a wildly divergent view of how that law should be interpreted. The reality for people who are looking to obtain health care through the Affordable Health Care Act, it's the same as it always was. There's just a heck of a lot of uncertainty. You still have people who, like me, don't think it's the best plan to put out in front of those who need health care. And you've got those who are prepared to take the option because it's the only option that they've got available to them if they have health issues that aren't going to be covered by your standard health care plans.
How could two courts come up with two different perspectives of this thing, Joel?
Well, if one court is goofy and the other court is reading the law, yeah, that can happen. I am more impressed sort of the opposite direction, that for the most part the courts have made very intelligent decisions on this act, including the U.S. Supreme Court when, you know, the Republicans tried to get the whole thing thrown out. And John Roberts actually protected the law very sensibly. Yeah, it's working well. Millions of people are signing up. As Gerard says, people are getting coverage for pre-existing conditions they could never get coverage for before. There are subsidies, federal subsidies for people who could never afford insurance before. The goofy thing about this decision out of the Washington, D.C. court was it's sort of is pretending there was ever a plan for people, you know, low-income people to buy insurance without federal subsidies, which was always, you know, that's what the Republicans and the Democrats were arguing over, were the federal subsidies for health care to give people insurance who never had it before. And they say there's something in the wording, you know, could they only get federal subsidies if they went through a state exchange, instead of, you know, we know a lot of Republicans refuse to set up state exchanges. So then those states weren't going to be covered by federal subsidies. All the commentary I've read on it, including from, you know, very conservative, anti-Obama, you know, people, is that was a silly decision. And in fact, I don't know that it has to go to the Supreme Court because, you know, the Obama administration wants the full Washington, D.C. court to hear it.
And we know why.
Well, because there
are seven more Democratic appointees on that bench.
This was a three-judge panel, and 2 out of the 3 went with this goofy decision.
It wasn't goofy.
And the full court, of course, will approve it because they know that the law always intended for there to be federal subsidies. It's just and the other court said that essentially. And I don't think this is in any jeopardy. I think. Yeah, yes, the Republicans have put enough judges on the bench that are going to sometimes come up with political decisions. But what I'm most impressed with from the federal court decisions we've seen recently, not just on this issue, but gay marriage and other issues, Republican-appointed justices are actually following the Constitution. They aren't coming up with these political decisions for the most part.
Well, how concerned should those who signed up for this program be that they might just be left out in the cold?
The answer is very, and Gerard is correct. It's no laughing matter when you don't know if you're going to be covered tomorrow or next week or next month.
Republicans tried to kill it 50 times and they didn't succeed. They are going to be covered.
There's an extreme amount of uncertainty about this. And I've been around making laws, drafting the wording for laws for a long, long time. And there's nothing ambiguous about the wording in the law, which I looked at this week. It says rather explicitly that the tax subsidies must come from an exchange created by the state. Intent, laws aren't built on intent. You can't now, after this ruling, say, well, Congress always intended for these for federal subsidies as well. Well, it's not what the intent of the law is. It's what the law says it's going to do.
Of course, all the time say what the intent of the law is.
Now, as far as these other states like Wisconsin, who decided not to create a state exchange, you can't blame them because they were trying to protect as many people as possible from being subject to the mandate and protect them from a penalty in case they did not take out insurance. Gerard, again, you're right. It's going all the way up to the United States Supreme Court because you do have different views, different rulings from different courts, and we all know why Obama immediately appealed to the three-judge panel because the rest of that panel is dominated by judges who are appointed by Democrats.
Will there be any
who will uphold the Constitution? Actually,
to what degree might there be an attempt for Congress to try to resolve this before it has to go back to before?
Well, that's why the November elections are going to be critical because once it's been decided at the Senate level, at least, as to who's going to be in control of that House, you'll either have the president's initiative sustained, or you're going to see some radical changes take place with legislation going to him that will significantly alter, if not, in fact, throw it right out and defund it if they can't get the law changed.
You are not going to repeal Obamacare, take health insurance away from millions of people, which is bringing down the cost of health care in this country. It's not going to happen.
The premiums are
I'm glad you two agree with each other and have been congratulating each other on how smart you both are, but you're wrong.
I do believe that this law, if both the House and the Senate fall into Republican hands, will come up with those two houses will come up with their own plan, or Obamacare will be defunded as we know it today.
All right, let's move on now. It's still a contest. Incumbent Scott Walker and challenger Mary Burke remain virtually tied in the race for Wisconsin governor. It's been that way since the month of May. Marquette University Law School provides the latest snapshot of this. It shows Walker leads Burke among registered voters, 46% to 45%. Among likely voters, Burke edges Walker 47% to 46%. So, why is the race still so close, Kevin?
Well, I think everyone has been assuming, including the governor, that it's going to be a close race. But it's only July. All right. I think most people are not as engaged. For them, the biggest question these days is it going to be a brat or a hamburger on the grill this week? And I don't mean to make light of this. What happened between this Marquette poll and the last Marquette poll? You had the screaming, misleading, and totally inaccurate Journal Sentinel headline saying that the governor was the target of a criminal investigation, which it was proven later was not. He was not. But that was out there while this poll was being taken, and I think that had something to do with these numbers. Eventually, I think the governor is going to pull away. Eventually, Mary Burke has to define herself. She has not. Will she have the resources to do that other than her own? I don't think so. I think Republicans are geared up to do whatever they can to reelect Scott Walker. The Republican Governors Association has raised $50 million, knowing that three Republican governors have targets on their backs. The Democratic Governors Association has only raised $27 million. The governor has incumbency. He has a strong campaign team. He has a record to run on. He took a $3.6 billion deficit and turned it into a surplus. Property taxes are down. More people have access to health care under this governor because he increased the rules for Badger Care Plus. He's created over 100,000 jobs and over 21,000 new businesses. I think once the campaign really gets going and we find out some of the things about Mary Burke that we don't know, I think the race doesn't become as tight as it is.
Why is it so close?
Actually, it's so close because the governor can't get any more support. Mary Burke clearly can get a lot more support because, Kevin's only right about one thing, which is a lot of people in the state don't even know about her yet.
Right.
And yet she's running head-to-head with the governor. And the more people do learn about her, her support can go up. Everyone knows about Scott Walker, and his support cannot go up. In fact, if all those wonderful things that Kevin just said were true,
they are.
It's amazing that he can't get up to 50% of support in the state. In fact, there are more people who disagree with him than agree with him. So the advantage Republicans have always had has been that on off-year elections, when it's not the presidential race, their voters usually come out and vote more than Democratic supporters do. The interesting thing about this poll was the likely voter turnout, because, I've conducted polls, and I respect Charles Franklin, who conducts this poll.
Right.
Screening who a likely voter is one of the most difficult things that a pollster has to do. So the likely voter, usually in an off-year election, Republicans would overwhelmingly win among likely voters because their voters are more likely to turn out. But in this case, it's not true. That tells me Democrats are doing a very good job of cranking up the turnout, which is exactly what they have to do, because we know when more people vote in this state, Republicans lose and Democrats win. It happens every presidential election.
Ultimately, what's going to make the difference in this race, Gerard?
This poll, which I think we all can agree is a respected poll and a respected pollster, is similar to the polling that was done with Tom Barrett in his run against Scott Walker in the recall election. And Tom Barrett was polling just like Mary Burke is polling right now, and he lost.
Except
and Mary Burke will lose.
Tom Barrett was.
Mary Burke will. Well, yeah, you had two knowns. And when you look at 46, 47% for each of the two candidates right now, the question comes down to what we've all been saying. It's going to be tight. The margin of those who are voting and yet undecided is going to be the determinant. And it's who you can get out that's in your camp or is more likely to agree with you that's going to decide who wins this. And I do believe that the Republicans have a better ground game. I do believe that Scott Walker has a better message. And I also think that he's ginned up more enthusiasm from his supporters than Mary Burke has for hers.
Who are still charged up since the recall. The two other numbers, that I think got buried in the story but are very, very enlightening, showed that 66% of these people that were polled think that the state is headed in the right direction under Governor Walker. Right. Over half approve of the job he's doing. Those are great numbers.
Right. More disapprove than approve. And in fact, another important thing about this poll was that it was taken at a time when the Republicans and Walker were putting out trash ads against Mary Burke, and they apparently have not had any effect. They have not driven her, out of the dead heat that she's in. And the fact that the governor in this state attacked a Wisconsin company, a very popular, successful Wisconsin company that employs 1,000 people and pays millions of dollars millions of dollars in taxes and is a very well-respected company
and pays its employees $1.80.
No, let that
above the minimum wage, which this governor doesn't want to raise.
Let that ad end up in the courts just as all this trash that they were trying to throw at Scott Walker around
no, it doesn't have to end up in the courts because, in fact, it makes Scott Walker look bad.
It should end up in the courts.
For a governor to attack a company, a great company in his own state.
No, he attacked the hypocrisy
He attacked a great company in
businesswoman saying that
one of his most popular
the rules don't
companies
apply
in Wisconsin.
We can attack the governor for outsourcing, but even though we outsource, those rules don't apply to us. The rules we're talking about.
90% of Scott Walker's supporters.
This is why I only do 3 shows a year.
You're getting a little gray there.
A little bit. It's a tough world in here. Topic number 3. Does bigger mean better when it comes to taxi service in Milwaukee? City Hall apparently thinks so. The Common Council has lifted the cap on the number of taxi permits in the city. The ordinance also includes the operation of so-called smartphone-based transportation services. Licensing and background checks will apply to all concerned. There's plenty of debate on the changes within the industry itself, and a legal challenge is expected. The bottom line, what does this all mean for the average rider in Milwaukee, Joel?
Better cab service for sure.
You think so? Why?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it will not just be limited to a couple of cab companies. It's opening up competition. Other companies are going to be competing for those customers. It is almost impossible to get a cab in Milwaukee, and we've known that for a long time. We've known why for a long time.
You're talking about hailing a cab on the street or calling a cab?
They're all sitting in front of the Fischer. That's why you can't
I'm talking about anywhere. Unless you're out at the airport where they're going to be parked. Try to find a cab in this town. You have to call ahead, and then maybe they'll come. But these competing services are making more transportation available. It's going to make the cab companies give better service than they have in the past. It's not going to limit the number of drivers so that, these cab licenses are worth a fortune and make just a few people rich instead of, competing drivers who can compete for those customers.
Is this a good thing, Gerard?
I love it.
Really? Why do you love it?
Because, one, I think that it will increase the opportunities for people to take cabs. The one drawback is that you will have to have, instead of cash, you'll have to have a credit card or a debit card that you utilize, and you have to have access to the internet. But most young people already have that, and most folk who are seniors, they will still have the traditional cab service if that's what they choose to utilize. It's amazing how quickly the turnaround has happened, but in those cities where these two operations, Uber and Lyft, are already being utilized, it's a success story. And I'm grateful that there was enough sense by the Milwaukee Common Council to employ it here and to put on those additional layers that address the concerns people had around safety and the credibility of the cab drivers.
Kevin, what do you expect from this? Are we going to see better service?
Absolutely.
Or just more cabs?
Absolutely. And take note, I think we're all 3 amigos here.
Amazing.
Uber love.
Yeah, and Joel sounded actually like a conservative during his.
I believe in
response.
competition.
It's good,
There we
and
go.
it will make for a better competition, better service. The Common Council did the right thing. Took them a little while for the light bulb to go on, but they did the right thing. And this will succeed because there's a market. There's a demand for these services, and there shouldn't be a cap. If 100 others want to come out of the woodwork and have cabs, let them have it. Let's have more cabs so that we can cover more of the city, so that it's not difficult to get a cab. I think this is a win-win. I don't see any drawbacks here at all.
You mentioned the fact that, there's just such a huge group of cabs that really wait in line at key landmarks here in Milwaukee. Some of the prominent hotels, the airport especially.
Makes sense.
I never really understood how one could be competitive at the airport when the line was just so long to wait your turn to be called and take a fare.
Well, if you're not there, it's a missed opportunity.
But how have taxis survived up to this point in Milwaukee?
Because there have been so few. And that's part of why the service is so
limited
bad as
competition,
well.
right.
You know, there've been so few. So yeah, I know if you pick up somebody at the airport, they probably got a long ride ahead of them that's going to pay you
$30
at least.
Now, there's talk of a legal challenge from some of the cab companies who are not happy with this. How serious of a threat do you see?
What would the grounds be? As one of the aldermen had already pointed out, it's not their responsibility to ensure that lack of competition exists in the marketplace. And what they're relying on, what these cab drivers are relying on is, or the cab owners, they're the ones who are raising the complaint mostly. The owners of the medallions are the ones that feel hurt because many of them have spent tens of thousands of dollars in order to have that exclusivity. Now that that doesn't exist anymore, they go down the drain just like any other organization that has to face competition.
If you take an anti-capitalism argument into an American courtroom, you will lose.
Yes.
All right.
You will lose.
Let's move on now to Joe's laughing again.
He's agreeing with me because he was conservative on this issue.
No, as a matter of the problem with capitalism these days is not too much competition. It's when they drive out all the other competition.
Okay, what's your favorite summer activity in Milwaukee?
What's that?
Interesting question. What is your favorite summer activity here in Milwaukee besides riding a cab? From concerts in the park to lakefront festivals, beer gardens. I think we need at least another half dozen beer gardens. And seasonal sports. Our city likes a good time. And our neighborhoods offer a variety of shops, restaurants, and landmarks to chill. So, as we're closing in on the month of August, it might be fitting to reflect on what summer is like in our city. When it comes to popular hangouts, parts of town, or special events, which ones, really, in your opinion, Gerard, best define the Milwaukee experience? Which festivals, which organizations,
This ought to be good.
which happenings really have it together in a professional way?
Anything down on the lakefront. I think that's become the gathering place for this town and much, in fact, of southeastern Wisconsin during the summertime. We haven't had much summer weather. I mean, a number of the fireworks and some of the air shows have been canceled because of the bad weather. But the bottom line is we've got permanent structures down on the lakefront to accommodate virtually any major festival that we want to hold. That's a huge attraction. The cost to attend those festivals is reasonable. And I think that people have demonstrated that it's one of those rare opportunities where so many folk can come together, whether it's around the ethnic festivals or the music festivals, to just hang with each other and reconnect. It's a wonderful, wonderful place.
Joel, this time of year, what are you proudest of in terms of Milwaukee happenings, and which ones are better run, in your opinion?
Well, I think what's really improved in this town just in very recent years, and the reason it hadn't before was because of what Gerard said, that bad weather, and you can never really count on it. But a few years ago, restaurants started, dragging a few chairs out onto the sidewalk or something to allow people to eat outside. But now they're actually, created open-air courtyards and gardens and
live music.
adding some music sometimes. So we were just very slow on that because it was like we hadn't crawled out from under the winters yet. And a year like this, isn't real successful for that because this has been such a bad summer. Of course, the other full-time open-air place that I hang out is Miller Park, and you can close the roof if the weather gets bad.
We're running out of time in the segment. Your favorite thing to do in the summertime?
And we didn't swap notes before the show, but for me, it's the ethnic festivals. The ethnic festivals, the Fischer family tries to hit as many as possible. And now with my 5-year-old daughter, Kyla, if you can picture this, it's a must to run through those fountains by the mid-gate, and I've been known to get in there myself and get soaked. And I MC at Irish Fest the children's red hair and freckle contest, and I've been doing that for a long, long time. So we get down to the
You weren't doing that when my daughter entered.
I would have made sure she won.
The nicest thing you've said all night, Mr. Fischer. You know that summer heat doesn't always give cause for celebration in Milwaukee. A couple of local news stories have certainly made that clear this week. In fact, sometimes human behavior can get downright ugly. And our colleague Rick Horowitz thinks he can see the future.
Thanks, Mark. Well, we've got a busy one out on the highways today as you prepare for your afternoon commute. A couple of spots you'll definitely want to be aware of as you head home. First, of course, you got your major jam up on northbound 43 near Good Hope Road. Another running gun battle. This time it's a late model Nissan exchanging fire with a silver gray Dodge Durango. No reports of injuries yet, but a 2-mile backup northbound and some rubbernecking delays heading south as well. You'll want to steer clear of that one. More gunplay gumming up the works over on Silver Spring at 45. A couple of rounds apparently squeezed off by 2 drivers disagreeing about a yield sign. Police are on the scene, only minor injuries so far. Slide over to the left-hand lanes if you're heading west, or just break out the Kevlar vests. A disabled vehicle on westbound I-94 just beyond the Zoo interchange. Apparently a Ford minivan with its rear tires shot out. Allow plenty of time to get by. You'll be riding the brakes from 68th. On 43 south of downtown, it's stop and go because of a blood spill in the center lane. No explanation yet, but slippery going, as you might imagine. And down at the airport, a couple of the automatic toll lanes shut down by semi-automatic weapons fire. Could be some serious road rage there. Ambulances are on their way. In the western burbs, meanwhile, significant delays now reported. A 4-car shoot-'em-up at the intersection of 2nd and LaPierre, and a couple of delivery vans strafing each other along County Road AK at 47. Shell casings and broken glass still being cleaned up in both locations, so look for alternate routes or dinner's gonna be cold. Summer weather certainly having an impact on travel times, too, this afternoon. We've got an area of high pressure along the lakefront with lots of instability in the atmosphere, and our storm spotters are now reporting a hail of gunfire in scattered locations north and west of the city. You can expect even more ballistic activity as we move into the evening hours, with about a 70% chance of mayhem overnight and raining bullets right through sunrise. You're up to date. All in all, pretty typical for late July. Stay dry, stay low.
Rick makes an interesting point. It has to stop. Thanks, Rick, for that perspective. Dan Jones will be back with you next week. It's always a joy to sit in with my colleagues. Have a great weekend. Take care for now.